Welcome to the debate. Imagine standing in a crowded, dusty market in the outer hills.
Right.
You're just minding your own business, and a heavily armed stranger physically bumps into you.
Yeah, an absolute giant of a guy.
Exactly. And within 5 minutes of this so-called accidental encounter, he spotted your concealed weapon, extracted your deepest family secrets, and casually informed you that your dead grandfather, the man you revere as a saint, was actually a criminal.
It's an insane sequence of events.
It really is. Are you experiencing the fateful arrival of a mentor? Is this your destiny calling? Or, are you being systematically groomed by a predator?
And that is exactly the terrifying reality we are staring down today. It's a scenario that really forces us to question everything we know about the traditional mentor archetype.
Welcome to episode 4 of our ongoing exploration into the Neo-Gentrics multiverse. We are picking up exactly where we left off last time, focusing entirely and exclusively on the first act of Neo-Gentrics, The Whistling Swordsman. Beginnings.
Right, we are still deep in the first act.
Yes, the stage is the bleeding, post-war continent of Pekadesh. The setting is the unforgiving outskirts of the city of Sykar and the Orient lands. And the central question we are tackling today is this. Is Kenshin Sensei a genuine mentor to our protagonist Xeonyx, or is he a calculating manipulator?
A very calculating manipulator.
Well, I represent the perspective that Kenshin is a genuine, undeniably gritty mentor. He's a veteran stepping up to honor a harsh, real-world debt to a fallen comrade. He is basically taking on the massive burden of protecting and training a dangerously ignorant kid who would otherwise, frankly, absolutely get himself killed.
Yeah, and I look at the exact same sequence of events and see a highly deceptive opportunist. I do not trust Kenshin at all.
Not even a little?
Not even a little bit. He is a predator who is exclusively after the Whistling Wind bloodline and the legendary blade. Every single action he takes in this first act points to manipulation.
Look, Kenshin isn't some flawless knight in shining armor. And frankly, in Neo's universe, he shouldn't be, right?
Sure, the world is dark.
Exactly. The Congo War ended 17 years ago, and Pekadesh is still actively dealing with the fallout. Kenshin's actions aren't predatory. They are the necessary, abrasive approach of a battle-hardened veteran trying to wake up a sleeping kid.
I wouldn't call it necessary.
But it is. He dismisses Xeonyx initially, because to him, Xeonyx is just another clumsy civilian in the marketplace. Seeing the Cardinal Dagger is what changes the dynamic. It's the verification he needs.
The verification for his target.
Well, let me finish. When he tells Xeonyx his grandfather was a loan shark who dealt in crystals, he is not being cruel. He is pulling Xeonyx out of a dangerous fantasy. The Congo War was unspeakably brutal, right? Xeon clerics likely had to do incredibly shady things just to fund his efforts and survive. Kenshin is honoring a bloodstained debt by preparing an unprepared kid for the violent realities of the world.
Okay, so you're phrasing it as preparation, but the text just screams exploitation. Let's look at the objective facts of their first encounter. Kenshin bumps into Xeonyx, completely dismissive, until his eyes lock onto that Cardinal Dagger.
Which is a very noticeable weapon.
Right, but suddenly he is intensely interested. And we really have to contextualize Xeonyx here. This is a young man who is 22 years old, yet he possesses the tactical and emotional maturity of a child.
Yeah, he is extremely sheltered.
Deeply sheltered by his father. And what does he do? He blindly hands over his family history, just blurting out the name of the legendary Xeon clerics to a complete stranger.
He didn't know better.
Exactly my point. And Kenshin's immediate response is to fabricate this highly convenient story about owing the grandfather crystals, framing the fabled defender of the helpless as like a street-level thug. Kenshin is intentionally shattering a naive boy's worldview to isolate him and gain unhindered access to the Whistling Wind lineage.
But wait, if he is isolating him for access, why try to walk away first? Let's look at the actual physical mechanics of that marketplace bump. Kenshin physically turns to leave.
Well?
He does. He says, "It's okay, kid. I should have paid attention." He is literally brushing it off.
You call it an innocent brush off, but I call it a shakedown. He leverages a simple bump to extract military secrets. It's like a pickpocket bumping into you on the subway to feel exactly where your wallet is.
Oh, come on. A pickpocket?
Yes. Only here, Kenshin is a tall, heavily built man with twin swords feeling out a civilian. The second he spots the weapon, his entire demeanor flips. Wait, what's that on your side?
Because what is on his side isn't just a normal pocket knife. It is the cardinal dagger. We really need to explain what this weapon actually is in the context of Neo's world because it completely changes the dynamic of that scene.
It's a broken chain blade.
Right, a broken chain blade isn't just a sharp piece of metal.
No, it is a highly specialized piece of military hardware from the Congo War.
Exactly. And how does a broken chain blade even work? It's a momentum weapon. The wielder uses centripetal force to swing the blade on a tether, specifically designed to wrap around enemy swords and disarm them.
Which is incredibly dangerous to the user.
It requires massive kinetic awareness, spatial calculation, and years of physical conditioning just to avoid slicing your own arm off. So Kenshin sees this civilian, who just clumsily bumped into him in a fish market, casually carrying a weapon that requires master-level combat awareness. That is a massive anomaly.
It is an anomaly, sure, but how he uses that anomaly is the core issue for me.
It demands questioning. In a post-war society where unauthorized weapons get you killed by the local enforcers, seeing a kid casually wearing a broken chain blade is terrifying.
Terrifying or an opportunity?
No, terrifying. And then Xeonyx says he uses it to carve wood. Kenshin literally asks, why would you do that instead of something more practical? I mean, you're not that young, are you? He is assessing combat readiness. The shock of finding the grandson of Xeon clerics is real, and the dagger is just the forensic proof of identity.
Okay, let me stop you right there. If Kenshin is just assessing a civilian who possesses a dangerous toy, why does he push so hard the second Xeonyx mentions his grandfather?
Because he recognizes the legacy.
But Xeonyx practically hands him the keys to the kingdom by saying his grandfather was a swordsman in the Congo War. Kenshin doesn't just nod and tell the kid to be careful. He demands the name. The moment Xeonyx utters Xeon clerics, Kenshin initiates Phase 2 of the manipulation.
And what exactly is Phase 2?
Psychological warfare. I mean, Neo explicitly highlights a jarring contradiction here. Xeonyx proudly calls his grandfather a defender of the helpless and hero of Pekadesh. This is the foundational myth of this boy's entire existence.
Yes, his idealized version of him.
And what does Kenshin do? He laughs. He literally grins and calls the great whistling swordsman a loan shark, who he owed crystals to.
Wait, let me push back on that. I want to make sure we are totally clear on the mechanics of this economy, because it is central to your argument. Why crystals? What makes dealing in crystals so taboo in Pekadesh that it would, shatter a boy's worldview?
Because crystals aren't just a benign national currency. They are the compressed energetic remnants of the land itself, and they're heavily regulated by the Orient ruling class.
Right, they're highly controlled.
Exactly. And during the Congo War, the black market for crystals funded mercenary death squads and illicit weapons manufacturing. To deal in off-book crystals meant you were bankrolling the darkest, most brutal aspects of the conflict. By associating the grandfather with illegal crystal lending, Kenshin is telling Xeonyx that his noble hero was actually a blood money financier.
Which makes total sense for a resistance fighter trying to survive. If conventional supply lines are cut, how else does a rebellion fund itself?
That might be true historically, but in this moment, it creates a fabricated debt to force a relationship.
I don't see it as fabricated.
It is an isolation tactic. If you want to control a mark, you separate them from their existing support structures and beliefs. By dirtying the grandfather's name, Kenshin positions himself as the only purveyor of the truth. He is effectively saying, your family lied to you. Your hero was a thug, but I will show you the real way.
I completely disagree with that framing, because it ignores how Neo writes survival in this universe. Think about the psychology here. If Kenshin is a con artist trying to groom a naive kid, what is the absolute path of least resistance?
Well, flattery. He tells the kid what he wants to hear.
Yes. He plays directly into the hero worship. A manipulator would say, your grandfather was a shining knight of pure virtue, and I am here to help you take up his holy crusade.
But let me just finish this thought.
Xeonyx would have followed him to the ends of the earth right then and there. It would have been incredibly easy. But Kenshin chooses the abrasive, difficult path. He tells the ugly, uncomfortable truth about the crystals. Heroes in the Congo War didn't survive on pure intentions. They survived on grit, moral compromise, and dark money. Kenshin is treating Xeonyx like an adult for the first time in his life, breaking down a dangerous illusion.
But he is not treating him like an adult. He is exploiting a specifically manufactured vulnerability. We have to talk about Xeonyx's sheer, terrifying naivete.
He is naive, I'll give you that.
He might be 22 physically, but mentally, he has been heavily sheltered by a father who moved the family to the outer hills, specifically to keep them away from the juveniles of the city.
He's a metalsmith trying to protect his family?
He overprotected them. Xeonyx spends his days whittling wood. He openly admits he feels out of place with his family's strict moral codes. He is desperate for purpose.
Which makes him a risk to himself.
Right, and Kenshin spots this gaping psychological wound immediately. The boy eagerly spills his grandfather's exact name. He readily agrees to meet a heavily armed stranger at a remote location called Shaman Hill. Kenshin isn't treating him like a peer. He recognizes a mark who is desperate for a mentor and eager to access the Whistling Wind style, and he simply opens the door for the kid to walk into the trap.
But let's look at how Kenshin actually opens that door. This is where your grooming theory hits a wall for me. If Kenshin is just manipulating him for the bloodline, why does he put up barriers?
What barriers?
He explicitly refuses to teach Xeonyx just because of his name. He says, I don't want to do it because you are his grandson. I want to do it because I promised him that I would not let his teachings die. And then he sends Xeonyx away.
Right, to go buy a sword.
Exactly. He tells him to find or buy his own training blade first. If you are a predator who has just cornered a highly valuable target, you do not let that target walk away into a hostile city alone. You secure the asset immediately. But Kenshin forces Xeonyx to take agency. He imposes a condition before he will even consider training him.
Sending a clueless kid into Sakar to buy a sword isn't giving him agency. It is like throwing someone who can't swim into a riptide just to see if they naturally figure out buoyancy.
That's a bit extreme.
It's either the ultimate test of survival or profound negligence. Let me explain the mechanics of a long con here. Letting him walk away solidifies the psychological hook.
How so?
If Kenshin grabs him by the collar in the market, Xeonyx might panic, his ingrained family rules against fighting might kick in. But by giving him a quest, go find the blade, Kenshin makes Xeonyx inactive participants in his own grooming. He makes the boy want to come back. It is the illusion of choice.
That implies Kenshin wants him to fail or get hurt.
Well, Kenshin knows Sakar is a powder keg. Sending an ignorant kid to wander around looking for a weapon is reckless. Unless Kenshin simply doesn't care if the boy lives or dies, as long as the strongest survive. Kenshin has a smug look on his face when he says he won't go easy on him. He is playing with his food.
But when Kenshin says he won't go easy on him, Xeonyx responds, please don't use me as a punching bag, to get back at him for some weird reason. And Kenshin just laughs and says, I'm not. There's genuine warmth there.
A laugh doesn't mean warmth.
But he gives his name, he establishes a formal teacher-student dynamic right in the open. He sees a legacy about to be extinguished by the boy's sheer ignorance, and he throws him a lifeline disguised as a challenge.
A lifeline that perfectly aligns with gaining access to the last living heir of the Whistling Wind style. We really need to remember how this martial style functions, because it is not just swinging a sword.
Right, it is a high-concept martial art.
It is a high-concept martial style that harmonizes directly with the wind's elemental power. And how does it do that? By channeling ambient atmospheric kinetic energy through the unique physiology of the Xeon bloodline.
It generates localized pressure vacuums.
Yes, in the right hands, it is a weapon of mass destruction. Kenshin isn't just looking at a kid, he is looking at an unexploded ordnance. He wants the detonator, he wants the power of the wind, and framing the grandfather as a loan shark who owes him crystals is the perfect, unverifiable lie to chain that power to himself.
But the evidence shows Kenshin respects the underlying philosophy of the style. He quotes the grandfather directly, remember? "The way of the swordsman is like a leaf in the wind. We go wherever the winds of destiny guide us."
Anyone can memorize a quote.
He is passing on the true teaching, not a corrupted version. The boy's own father hid the truth and suppressed the boy's natural inclinations. Mentorship isn't always kind. Sometimes it looks like a veteran telling you your hero was a thug, simply to toughen you up for the war that is inevitably coming to your doorstep.
Look, the father hid the truth because he knew engaging with the sword arts would bring ruin upon their family. Kenshin swoops in, bypasses the protective barrier, and exploits the boy's rebellious boredom. It is a calculated manipulation.
Well, we have clearly drawn our battle lines here. I think Kenshin is a war-hardened realist. He spots a boy carrying a broken cardinal dagger, realizes he is dangerously unprepared for the world, and steps in to honor a genuine, gritty debt. His refusal to coddle Xeonyx, his demand that the boy find his own blade, and his brutal honesty about the grandfather's morally gray past all point to a harsh but entirely necessary mentorship. He is the guide Xeonyx desperately needs.
And I maintain that Kenshin is a highly calculated manipulator. He uses the physical bump to assess a mark, zeroes in on the cardinal dagger, and exploits the terrifying naivety of a sheltered 22-year-old.
We just read the market scene so differently.
We really do. The Crystal Loan Shark story is a fabricated lie designed to tarnish the grandfather's noble legacy, isolating Xeonyx from his family's values.
Kenshin cares about controlling the legacy and power of the Whistling Wind style, not the boy.
And this brings us to a profound deadlock. Based purely on this first act, neither side can definitively prove Kenshin's true allegiance. Neo brilliantly leaves both possibilities wide open. In a traumatized society like Pekadesh, true mentorship might be entirely indistinguishable from predatory grooming, because survival requires stripping away innocence.
Exactly. Every smile can be warmth or a smirk. Every challenge can be a lesson or a trap.
Which means we are turning this over to you. We want to hear from you. Is Kenshin telling the truth about the crystals, or is he playing a naive kid?
It completely recontextualizes the rest of the book. It absolutely does. But regardless of Kenshin's true intentions, the training begins. Join us for episode 5, where we will debate the ultimate burden and curse of the Whistling Swordsman legacy itself.
I can't wait.
Until then, watch your pockets in the market and question the hands that guide you.